I'm going to come back here because I have to click. I can't click from there because my remote's broken, of course. So thank you so much for being here at 7:30 in the morning. I was saying before, I feel I have an advantage. I'm on East Coast time. I hope some of you are on East Coast time as well because this is 5:30. It's great. So before we start, I wanted to just get a read on who's in the room. So if you're here and you're with a not-for-profit, can you just let me know? Show me your hands. Okay. And then if you're here and you're from the corporate side or you're a brand marketer, okay, we're skewing that way. So this presentation is really geared, to be completely honest, at kind of a cause marketing newbie. And I'm not assuming that you guys are newbies by any stretch. So I'm hoping that even if you are somebody who's got experience either on the not-for-profit side or on the corporate side with cause marketing, maybe this will just give you a refresher and give you some new things to think about. It is more geared towards the corporate audience, but I'm hoping that our not-for-profit friends will get value from it as well, because hopefully it can illuminate what corporate folks are looking for and how they have to, the challenges that they face when they're thinking about getting into cause marketing. So with that caveat, this is what we're going to do, and I'm going to kind of yammer at you for about 30 minutes, but it's going to fly, because you can be so inspired. But this is what we're going to cover, and then I get to turn it over to my esteemed panelist, who I'm going to introduce in just a little bit. So the first thing we'll do is we'll make sure that we're on the same page definition-wise, and some of you are going to be like, really? We're doing vocabulary? But you'll see why in a minute. We'll talk a little bit about why cause marketing matters. I probably don't need to go too much into that because we're all here so we know that cause marketing matters, but I have some fun facts that will help you, tell your story back to your organization about the power of cause. Navigating the cause landscape. Here's where I try to give you some actionable tools. So literally a little bit of a roadmap. If you've never come up with a cause marketing campaign, you know it's right for your organization. What are some of the questions that you should think about when you go back and start your planning? And part of that is a cause marketing decision roadmap, which I'm going to warn you now is probably the ugliest slide you've ever seen. I have never figured out a way to make it pretty, but it's useful. So, you have that to look forward to. Okay, definitions. So I've given this talk a number of times, and I don't know about you guys, but I am amazed at how often these three terms get used indiscriminately. They get kind of swapped around and tossed around, but I think, we all know they're actually different, related but different. So just so we are all on the same page, these are some quick refreshers on what these things actually mean. Corporate citizenship, you might call it corporate social responsibility. Basically, a company's sense of responsibility towards the community and the environment in which it operates, both in the social and the ecological sense, right? Now, next, philanthropy. This is a very elegant definition. I don't know who came up with it, but I like saying it. So philanthropy is the effort or inclination to increase the well-being of humankind, as by charitable aid or donation. So we all know philanthropy is truly, in its purest sense, giving, okay? Not connected to a product, there's no marketing effort. Philanthropy is very often part of a larger corporate citizenship platform, but the two are not necessarily interchangeable. And finally, cause marketing, which is what we're here to talk about. A strategic positioning and marketing tool that links a company or brand to a relevant social cause or issue for mutual benefit. And what's always interesting to me is how often people sometimes forget that there is a mutual benefit. In olden times, call that 10 years ago, I remember when I was getting involved in cause marketing for my clients, the idea that there would be an overt business objective linked to a cause marketing campaign was like, ooh, that's so unseemly. But now I think we've all evolved to the point where absolutely we know that businesses can do good performance-wise, and they can do good in their communities and in the world. So mutual benefit, that's the key to cause marketing and what distinguishes it from pure philanthropy. Again, cause marketing, as we all know, is often part of a larger corporate citizenship strategy. So having just reviewed those terms, why does cause marketing matter? This is a great quote. It's actually about purpose-driven marketing, but I think it applies really nicely to cause marketing. So by embracing purpose, we can connect with consumers at a deeper level, shared life values. In doing so, we can move the relationship from transactional to philosophical, creating the basis for loyalty without reason. Now, any of us on the corporate side know that creating loyalty beyond reason in consumers is like the holy grail. That's right? Like, woo, if you do that, you're done. So clearly, cause marketing can be enormously effective at helping inspire that loyalty beyond reason. We're talking about creating emotional connections between consumers and brands. That does not always necessarily, oh, thank God for the crowds that have yet to come. We have our 2 chairs. That's great. Thank you very much. I know. So anyway, a nice quote to sort of frame our discussion. So I had promised you a little bit of some fun facts, to further illustrate quantitatively why cause matters. You guys have probably all seen the same Cone research and Mintel research that I have, but I love these numbers because they're so compelling. On the employee front, as we think about employee engagement, and this is the most recent Cone cause evolution and environmental study, 77% of employees say that it's important for their company to provide them with opportunities to get involved in cause. So 3/4 of U.S. employees feel that they should be able to participate in cause through their companies. Now, if you shift gears and think about the consumer, and I'm going to say consumer a lot, and I apologize. They're human beings, I know that, but consumer is shorthand for the people who buy stuff who want to participate in cause marketing. But consumers, 80% of Americans are likely to switch brands. So if you have two brands where price and quality are equal, they'll choose the brand that supports the cause. 80%. And I love this last stat. 88% of Americans say that it's acceptable for companies to involve a cause in their marketing. Again, I was saying, there was once a time where it was almost, regarded with maybe some skepticism or maybe a little bit of suspicion when a marketer would get involved in cause marketing. What's their motive really? Well, now I think it's almost expected in a way. I really do feel like things have evolved to the point where if a brand or a company is not involved in some kind of cause, there might be some questions as to why. 88% of Americans think it's acceptable, which is wonderful. It's an interesting question when you ask Americans, and this is an American focus, I'm not talking about global, that's a whole different thing, but what kinds of social areas do Americans feel companies should be making a difference? This is based on the Mintel report from 2011. It's 2,000 adults in the U.S. Children's welfare is the #1 area where people feel that companies should be making a difference. Not surprising. I mean, we all either have a kid, know someone with a kid, or we were kids, so I think we all care about the welfare of children. Second, health issues, not a surprise, ubiquitous. Again, we all either have a health issue or we're indirectly affected by it. We're here at the ACS Corporate Impact Conference. We all know the ubiquity of cancer alone, not to mention other diseases. And then third, fourth, and fifth, poverty and homelessness, veterans in the military, and education and literacy. That just gives you a sense of where people feel companies should be making a difference. Okay, this is quiz time. Does anybody want to wager a guess at how much money is projected to be spent on cause marketing in this country by the end of this year? Anyone feel brave? Oh, you guys, come on. All right, so I need somebody to say, go ahead, say something.
2 billion.
2 billion. Did you cheat? 1.78 billion. Well done. I was surprised by that number. That is a lot of money being spent on cause marketing in this country. Here's another question. This is all by way of painting a picture for how crowded and active this landscape is. Does anybody know how many not-for-profits there are in the United States? Did you say 1.3? Actually, I had 2.3. I could be wrong. That's from the Nonprofit Almanac 2012. 1.3? Okay, that's the IRS number? All right, we'll go with this number. All right, even if there are millions, I can tell you from the perspective of somebody who helps matchmake with clients, with corporate marketers and causes, where do you begin? There are so many not-for-profits out there. So again, this is a very, very, it's an expanding landscape, which is good. It's wonderful. There are a lot of organizations, a lot of money being thrown at cause. But if you're somebody who is contemplating getting into cause marketing, clearly you need help navigating, right? Because I think one of the worst things that can happen, and we've all seen it, let's be honest, there's some not so great cause marketing happening out there. That's why the term pinkwashing was invented. That's why the term greenwashing was invented. And I think when cause marketing campaigns are deemed as not successful or regarded with some cynicism, very often it stems from the fact that the brand involved does not seem to be there with authenticity. So a lot of what you have to think about if you're on the corporate side is, if we're going to get involved in a cause marketing campaign, in what way does it line up with our values? Do we have a right to play in this space? Will consumers and the public and the not-for-profit community look at this as a fit? There are a lot of different questions that need to be addressed before you begin. So we have a couple of tools to talk about here. I'll address how, meaning how can you think about where you can make a difference in the cause marketing arena? What do you want people to do? The point of cause marketing is that you're engaging people in your cause, right? So what are some models of engagement with consumers? And then where, which is, what is where? I can't remember what where is now. We'll get there in a minute. And then when is actually a slide. It's a bonus slide. I'm not going to take you through it because I want to get to our panelists, but it's kind of a fun chronology of cause marketing that shows really since the beginning of the last century how cause marketing has evolved and how that sort of tracks with the evolution of philanthropy and volunteerism, and also the evolution of pop culture. And it's kind of fun to see that there are a lot of interchanges amongst them. Okay, how to find your rightful place. I don't know if you guys can see the text here, but basically this is a tool that we've used with some of our clients at the very, very beginning. When you're thinking about your brand personality, but also the kinds of social problems you feel like you could address, how do you apply yourself, right? This is also a way to help map out where your competitors are playing, because one thing we always say to our clients is, you want to make sure that you're coming up with a cause marketing campaign idea that's ownable, that's truly yours. Because at the end of the day, if you're trying to build your brand or if you're trying to affect your business, you want to make sure that there are not 15 other people doing exactly the same thing. There are different ways you could create these axes, but this is one that we found interesting. So if you look at the north-south axis, what it says up at the top there is enhancing an opportunity, all right? Down at the bottom is solving a problem. So here we're talking about the goals of a cause marketing campaign. Now what's really interesting is, I've had some experiences with clients where the brands, for whatever reason, because of their corporate guidelines, because of the personality of the brand, they're not willing or able to wade directly into the fray with certain kinds of social issues. For example, tackling gun violence, or tackling some issues that are a little bit more polarizing, that might be politically charged. So the degree to which a brand can dive deeply into certain kinds of problems, it just really depends on their comfort level. Sometimes what happens is I find that our brands want to gravitate more towards a partnership that is enhancing an opportunity. So let's use an example. Let's talk about young women. So let's say I am a brand, that sells cosmetics to teenage girls. And I'm definitely interested in doing something that furthers the development of young women. That could go any way, right? You could solve a problem, which maybe is something a little bit more dark, talking about date rape or cyberbullying. Or if you kind of look all the way out to the other end of the spectrum, you could take on something, a partnership with an organization that is about building girls' self-esteem, or that is about teaching girls financial literacy. Now, obviously, every time you enhance an opportunity, you are solving a problem, but it's all in the how directly you're choosing to solve that problem. So one of the things that is always interesting to map is, do we want to go tackle a big problem? And I'll give you an example. So Always, the feminine care brand, Always has had a partnership for a couple of years in certain parts of the developing world where they identified a problem where young girls in certain parts of Africa, while they're menstruating, can't go to school. They don't have the tools, they don't have the equipment, they literally miss school every month. That is a problem. That has a tangible impact on their future schooling, on their future development. So Always clearly has a right to play in that area and can directly help solve that problem. Now, that's very, very specific. So that's an example of what that looks like. Enhancing an opportunity, as I said before, could be a partnership with the Girl Scouts, for example, where you're talking about softer values, enhancing self-esteem, enhancing a young girl's independence. So that's kind of that axis. Now, when you look east to west, brand fit, brand stretch. This is always interesting to do. So once you figured out the social area where you want to play, now think about, okay, would the public consider this social area a total fit, like a no-brainer with my brand? Easy example for you, Olay is one of our clients. They have been for years and years. For many years, they did a skin cancer awareness program with the American Society for Dermatologic Surgeons. That's an obvious fit. Their skincare brand, they sell an array of UV protection daily moisturizers, very concerned with skin health, not just skin beauty, so obviously that makes sense, right? Total brand fit. Now, if Olay decided one day that they wanted to be about, I'll say cyberbullying again, you might say, well, that's a bit of a brand stretch. Yes, the Olay consumer has kids, she's probably concerned about it, but there's not an immediate connection there, unlike, let's say, this is a silly example, but I'm just thinking of Instagram because every child I know is on Instagram now. Let's say I was Instagram and I wanted to do a campaign about cyberbullying. That's a brand fit, right? You guys kind of get that's intuitive. So again, it's fun to sort of plot and play with an axis like this to see where it feels comfortable for your brand to play. So the next question you can then tackle, this is my favorite question. This is where you figure out, what are we asking people to do? What's the call to action? We're going to do this campaign, we want people to participate, what are we going to ask them to do? There are 3 different models of engagement. This is wildly oversimplified, so please understand it. I know that there are hybrid models and there are nuances, but here's an easy way to think about this. First is the transactional model. What that says, this is where you do good by purchase. This is probably the oldest and the simplest example of cause marketing. I'm sure many of us in this room have participated in a transactional campaign. I buy the product, perhaps a percentage of my purchase goes to the charity. What's interesting about transactional is that I think what started to happen, I don't know, somewhere within the last 10 years or so, I think people wanted to know more specifically where their money was going. It wasn't just enough to know that I bought the bottle of Pantene and a portion of those proceeds would go to XYZ charity. People wanted to have a real sense of the impact that their dollars, their purchase were making. And you started to see these models evolve that were they were very, very creatively framed. So for example, Pampers, if you guys are familiar with the Pampers UNICEF partnership, which has been running for many years all over the world, the issue there was working with UNICEF to help eradicate infant tetanus, okay? So solving a problem, on the south end of that axis. And they did the math and they figured out that every time a purchase of a pack of Pampers was made, that made it possible to purchase and then donate a tetanus vaccine to a child in need of the developing world. One pack equals one vaccine. It's still a transactional campaign, but the way they framed it was so specific. And then all the other messaging and marketing that they did around it also made it clear to the public that, guess what? One vaccine is all it takes to save a baby's life. So now I'm buying diapers. Boy, do I have a sense of what my contribution, what my purchase has done. So it's an evolution of the transactional model, and it's wonderful. I think Tom's shoes is another great example. Usually, the more simple they are, the more powerful. I buy a pair of shoes goes to somebody in another part of the world who needs shoes. One-to-one. Next model. This is the participatory model. This is, I would describe this as doing good beyond purchase. There still might be a purchase involved, but this is where we're asking people to do something else, to do an act or give of themselves in a way that is not limited to buying a product. A classic example of this is the Yoplait Lids campaign, where you had to do something, right? You bought the yogurt, you took off the lid. I don't know, I assume you rinsed off the lid, I hope. And then that was set back in, and and money was raised for breast cancer research. That's participatory. Anne mentioned before that my agency's been involved with Pantene Beautiful Lengths with the ACS for several years. That's a very participatory campaign, because what that's making possible is that women and girls can pledge to grow their hair long and then donate an 8-inch ponytail so that we can then have wigs made for cancer patients that are then distributed free of charge thanks to the generosity of our ACS wig bank partners. Boy, is that participatory, because once you pledge to grow your hair, that could take several months. So we have people engaged in that campaign emotionally for months and months and months. It has nothing to do with the purchase. Of course, we'd like them to make a purchase because you do need hair products to get your hair long and strong. But the point is, they're feeling that they are part of something larger. Their participation is making something happen that on their own wouldn't be as impactful. So that's the power of the marketer in this instance. They create that wonderful framework. Now, the final model is really just a nuance of the participatory model. That's what we call mutual reward. So think of this as the participatory model, but there's an immediate tangible reward built into the framework of the program. Now, I know we could all say that even the participatory model is rewarding. If I donate my ponytail to Pantene Viewpoints, clearly there's a huge emotional reward, but I'm talking about an even more tangible, a material reward. So an example of this one is, has anybody heard Rockcore? They're actually a production company that do rock concerts and hip hop concerts. They've had a program for several years all around the world where they partnered with a brand partner. It was Boost Mobile for many years in this country. And what they do is, because they are geared mostly at a millennial audience, passionate about music, so what they did is they said, if you give us 4 hours of volunteer time at an approved participating not-for-profit, you get a free ticket to a Rockcore concert. And there were major talent too, Lady Gaga, Jay-Z. So in this instance, you have an immediate reward. You literally got to go see an amazing show for your 4 hours of volunteer time. So that's an example of the mutual reward model. Again, there are hybrids, there are nuances. One of the things that we often say to our clients is make sure that you create multiple ways that people can participate. Some people will only ever want to make the purchase and know that it does something good. Some people, especially, I'm sure this will get talked about, it'll get talked about in the millennial conversation. I think especially when you think about Gen Y and Gen Z, people want to do more. They don't just want to make a purchase. These kids are activists, right? Okay. How do you know cause is right for you? So this is the unattractive slide. So you've been warned. Here it comes. This is a decision tree, and this is something that we invite people to think about before you even get to do the fun stuff. So the planning of how are we going to involve consumers and what cause are we going to participate with. Before you do any of that, you have to answer a couple of questions. And the first one is your brand healthy? Okay? If business isn't good, it may not be the right time to go off and do cause marketing. Now, that said, sometimes a cause marketing campaign is exactly what your business needs. So, for example, I'm going to go back to Pantene for a minute. The reason Pantene Beautiful Blanks came about 7 years ago, 8 years ago, there was a business problem at that time. Procter & Gamble measures the equity health of all of its brands very religiously, and there were some issues with the equity perception of Pantene. Consumers no longer felt that it was a brand that cared about them. It was a brand that was cold and aloof. So clearly there was this emotional disconnect that had happened along the way. And in this case, but not always, a cause campaign could directly help address that issue and help forge that emotional connection. So in some cases, cause can help fix what ails you. But if not, stop, go fix your business. Don't spend money on cause marketing. I can't believe I just said that. But honestly, like, get the fundamentals of your business in order before you layer on a cause marketing program. We've learned this the hard way, trust me. Okay, but assuming that, yes, the business is healthy, let's go. The next question is your brand purpose clearly defined? Now, in your organization, you may call it something else. You may refer to a brand manifesto, a brand vision. But the point is, do you guys know what your brand stands for above and beyond the functional benefits of the product or the service that you sell? Okay? So I'm Olay, and I sell skincare products that work really well. But what else? You know, what do I stand for above and beyond that? The reason why this is important is because I was talking before about pinkwashing and greenwashing. This is where you get the authenticity right. If you know what your brand stands for, it's a heck of a lot easier to figure out the like-minded cause marketing partner and the way in which you want to help people enroll in your cause. So if you haven't done that work, it doesn't mean don't do cause. Just pause, though, and make sure you have a sense of what you want to stand for. If you do know, yay, good for you. We go on to the next question. This question is your brand conducive to playing in the cause space? This is a bit of a controversial question because when we originally created this slide, we were thinking of brands that were a little bit more edgy, a little bit more in your face, like Axe, for example, maybe some Forgive Me, some condom brands. We're thinking, could they be in a cause marketing campaign? Well, yeah, safe sex awareness, for example. You know, so I think it's just, this goes to tonality and how you execute, because when we think about cause marketing, very often we have images of, oh, you know, it's almost feminized in a weird way. There's something very emotional about it, as there should be, and some brands that don't communicate in the marketplace with that kind of tonality, they just need to think about striking the right notes. So it's not that if you're a condom brand, you can't be in cause marketing, it's just that you have to think it through and make sure you're getting the tone right. Okay, so assuming you've done that, now the next question is, do you know what matters to your consumer? That's a fun question. I can't tell you how many times we've had, probably because the CEO had a pet cause, that had nothing to do with the brand. We need to be about education, but your consumer doesn't even, your consumer's like a senior citizen. They don't care about education, elementary school education anymore. So it's an interesting question. Do you know what your consumer cares about? Gosh, doesn't that make it easier to line up what you want to accomplish as a brand with what they're passionate about? Because that's where you get that loyalty beyond reason. So let's not go backwards. So assuming that you do know that, you have a clear sense of the passion areas of your consumer, now this is really important. And people don't get this right because it takes time. Have you done a landscape assessment? Okay, so do you know, first of all, in your competitive set, do you know what your competitors are doing in the cause marketing arena? I'm going to assume you probably do, right? But do you know, let's say you've decided, let's say you are a snack brand and you've just committed to turn over 75% of your packaging to biodegradable materials. What better time to launch a campaign that has a green focus and maybe the consumer call to action is, let's plant trees. Okay, I'm being silly and oversimplifying. That's awesome, and you've done the landscape. You know that none of your snack competitors are doing anything having to do with planting trees. But guess what? Outside the snack category, I guarantee you there are 5,000 other brands doing campaigns that have to do with planting trees, okay? So the point is, when you look at your competitive arena, don't just look within your category, look more broadly. That's always an eye-opener. So let's assume that you've done that. Now, this is a very interesting question, and this can also fall, probably depending on your organization, you'll have to answer this question maybe earlier, but do you have senior alignment within your organization? Depending on that could be the marketing director, it could be the CEO. It depends on your organization. But I have seen very sad situations where, with our client, we've gone all the way through this, we've planned, we've lined up a cause marketing partner, we are ready to pull the trigger, and oops, Nobody checked to see if the Grand Poobah was aligned. And so I think it's scuttled because the Grand Poobah wants to do sports sponsorships, not cause marketing. So I think this is another question that where you answer it doesn't really matter, but just do make sure that you get it answered, because without full senior endorsement and sponsorship, it's very, very difficult to get a new cause marketing campaign off the ground. I keep going backwards. Okay, but let's assume you do, all right? Now, have you aligned on success measures? Now, I'm going to want to hear from the panelists on this, because there's so many ways you can define what success looks like for a cause marketing campaign. The marketer's going to say, I want to sell product, clearly. But there's so many other things. What about employee engagement? One thing that's interesting is I noticed the HR people don't often get pulled in at the right stage of the planning for when you're coming up with a cause marketing campaign. My gosh, their perspective is valuable. What do employees want? What are they passionate about? Could a new cause marketing campaign be a recruiting tool? HR is a valuable voice. Make sure you find out from them. Your retail partners. I'm sure that Bonnie from Walgreens will have a point of view on this. Do you know what your retail partners care about? That's happened too, where we've come up with a great campaign for May about skin cancer awareness, and oh, oops, guess what? Walmart during the month of May doesn't care about skin cancer awareness. They care about something else. So, oh, shoot. So I think that, understanding what success looks like to all of your stakeholders is very important, and clearly the social impact as well. Are you driving fundraising? Are you driving volunteerism? These are all things that have to be worked through. Which links directly to, I should probably flip the order of these actually, because the next question is, have you factored in the needs of all your stakeholders? That's what I'm talking about. If you're a public company, how will this impact the street? What is the investment community going to think? What does your consumer think? What does the media think? What does HR think? Retailer, all of that. You have to talk to all of those or factor in all of those parties. The last question that I can tell you as a PR person, it's very near and dear to my heart. Have you engaged all marketing disciplines? The thing that can happen with cause is that great ideas come from anywhere, right? So a great cause concept may bubble up with the advertising agency, and it goes off and it gets developed, but the PR people don't know about it, and that's a problem because the PR people know that XYZ company just did that campaign, and it didn't go well for XYZ reason. Everyone has to talk. Here's the other thing that we've learned. We know, and this has been measured because of all the work that we do in P&G, the degree to which a campaign is totally integrated across all marketing channels, the higher the ROI. It's been proven, it's cut and dry, it's black and white, the numbers bear it out. This holds true for cause marketing as well. So if you're on the corporate side and you're briefing your agencies, for example, or you're rallying your internal organization, make sure that you have all marketing channels at the table. Digital PR, advertising, media planning, media buying, in-store consumer promotions, don't leave anybody out, because they will just make that idea that much more powerful. Now, if you addressed all of this, now you can actually start the fun stuff, which is planning. And by planning, I mean addressing those other questions that we discussed before. So, I told you I had a bonus for you. That's the cause timeline, but I'm going to move on from that because I do want to get to our panelists because we are at 32 minutes. So, again, that may feel like a refresher for many of you, but hopefully it's given you some food for thought. What I think is going to be wonderful now is that we can shift gears and actually hear from the women who live this every day, best practices and best learning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hustle my cookies up to the podium, and I'm going to ask our esteemed panelists to come up here and join me as I introduce them. So, and what we're going to do, everybody, is I'm going to address some questions to the panelists for a little bit, but then we'll open up the floor to all of you. So please rest assured you'll have plenty of time for Q&A before we wrap. So first of all, Judy Rogozinski. Judy is the executive assistant to the president. You can come up in any order, you guys. That's okay. That's all right. This does happen to be Judy coming up first. Judy is with Party Light Americas. She's been with the company since 2007. Since that time, she's championed the efforts to raise funds for ACS. In 2008, the Party Light Regional Ambassador Program was formed to help consultants lead the way in raising awareness of funds, and Party Light joined the American Cancer Society's Relay for Life National Corporate Team Program. Judy's actually the manager of that program, and as such is charged with ensuring that the regional ambassadors and all Party Light consultants are informed and motivated in order to support ACS and other charities in their local communities. Since 1997, Party Light has donated nearly $14 million to the American Cancer Society. So welcome, Judy. Lynn is next in line. We're going to do Lynn now. Lynn McMasters is the Chief Revenue and Marketing Officer of the American Cancer Society. Lynn brings more than 25 years of experience in revenue growth. I love that. Do you want to hang out with me a little bit? I can use the revenue growth.
I'm the money.
Are you the money? All right. Revenue growth, brand development, acquisition, and retention marketing, qualitative and quantitative research, and data analytics. Throughout her career, Lynn has specifically pioneered methods to incorporate consumer motivation with data analytics to enhance ROI for a number of major private and not-for-profit organizations. During her career, she's developed considerable expertise and experience working with nonprofits, finding ways to create sustained revenue streams, and building brands. She comes to ACS, most recently having served as the Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer of Optum Health. She earned her bachelor's from Georgia State University in Atlanta, and she served on many nonprofit boards, including those of the Women's Funding Network, the Meridian International, Washington Area Women's Foundation, and AARP Women's Foundation. Welcome, Lynn. And last but not least is Bonnie Gordon, who is the Director of Cause Marketing for Walgreens. Bonnie has over 20 years of experience as an award-winning marketer, healthcare advocate, and creative inspirer. I'm totally ripping that off, by the way. I am changing my business card. I will be creative inspirer. Now also, and this is amazing, she has a very personal connection to our conversation today. As a 19-year, two-time breast cancer survivor, her passion is to provide free screenings and education programming for the underserved and underinsured across America. In her 17 years at Walgreens, Bonnie has held several marketing leadership roles as well as her current role. Bonnie focuses on key strategic alliances and programming, such as the development and implementation of the 4-year, $100 million Walgreens Way to Well commitment platform, which is focused on prevention and early detection of today's leading chronic diseases. She also the award-winning Walk with Walgreens Healthy Living Rewards program has over 1 million members and 9 billion steps logged. Through Walgreens strategic alliances, over $50 million has been raised through customer donations to support a variety of very worthy organizations, such as the American Diabetes Association, Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, the AHA, Komen for the Cure, and of course the American Cancer Society. Bonnie is from Louisville and currently lives in the Chicago area. Welcome, Bonnie. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to throw a question out, and I'm going to ask each of you ladies to answer it. And I love that we have different perspectives here. We have the retailer, we have the not-for-profit side, and we have the marketer side. So let's start with, what are some best practices that you've seen to help identify the ideal cause marketing partners? So again, from your perspective, what are some of the things that you look at when you're thinking about strategic alliances? Would you like to?
I guess I will.
Fantastic.
Party Light is nationwide, actually worldwide, and I think when I was not there when they started their partnership with ACS, but I think you need to find a charity that you're truly passionate about. And our sales force is primarily women, so you know women have a great passion for a lot of different things, and I think it was a very good fit. And it's going to be fit for your company's culture. And also, I think of matching geographically. If you've got a national company, a national presence, you should choose a charity that also has that national presence so that everybody is involved and has an opportunity to work.
That's great. Lynn, how about you?
Well, I think that it has to begin with the brand. And so whether you're a company who is seeking a cause partner, or if you are the cause seeking a partner with an external company, is that it's about brand and it's about brand alignment. And it really has to begin there. Do the two brands work together? Much to what you were talking about earlier, do they have the same values? And I think you have to begin there, and then I think you have to then look to, okay, how are we going to then begin to engage the consumer, both for the organization, those people who are engaged for us as our donors, as well as then the consumers for that brand. And how do you bring them together in a way that it's going to be meaningful and meet consumer needs?
I would echo both of the things that you said. Strategic fit, absolutely. It has to be a strategic fit. A lot of key stakeholders involved. So yes, it ties into the brand, but for us, it needs to really, it starts with research, I have to tell you. Whether it's internal or external, if it's not authentic to our consumer and our patient, it's not going to be authentic when we go out there. So I think it's really doing your homework internally and externally, and absolutely making sure that this is part of the brand strategy as we move forward and not sitting out on its own. because for a company of our size, as you say, many people have their causes they'd like to support, from here to here to here to here, and it must be defendable and it must be authentic.
You know, the other thing I'm just going to add to this is that I'm sitting here, first of all, I've been with the society for about 2 months, so I will tell you I'm not deeply steeped in this, but I will tell you that the partners that I have on both sides of me right now are ideal partners, and they're ideal partners for different reasons. So if you think about Walgreens, obviously huge brand alignment. I mean, alignment in terms of the cause of what we're doing versus what Walgreens is trying to do around prevention, around being healthy. Nice merger because, you know, American Cancer Society is about prevention, care, cure, advocate. So if you kind of go along those 4 lines, really well aligned. We recently did a consumer promotion with Walgreens, and it was using their new PinPad technology, and, you know, we ended up in 1 month with $6.5 million that was raised, and it was because great brand alignment. I will tell you that the third leg of the stool is really about then how do you activate through marketing what you're doing, and then you've got to look at the channels that your nonprofit partner has in order to bring it together, because you really can't just rely on, you know, your corporate partner to bring all of the marketing to the party. So you've got to be able to go through all of those. If you look at Party Light and the engagement, much of what they do is about bringing people together, and what ACS is about really is community. So it's the ability to be able to leverage that and to be able to bring people together in community. And yes, they're buying products and services, but it's that feeling of shared community, which is the need of the consumer.
I'm going to go talk about employees for a sec. So let me come back to you, Judy, because I hinted at it in my talk. Employee engagement clearly is something that could be massively affected positively by cause marketing efforts at a company. Can you share a little bit about just the feedback or any measurable results that you've seen amongst your consultants because of your cause involvement? Well, we've been described as kind of a hybrid. So we have product, we have volunteerism, the fundraising efforts that go across the board for different things. So I guess our employee engagement is the product we choose to feature as our charity product. Is it selling? Are they selling it? Do they embrace the fact that this was a great product for them to sell, for them to help awareness in their business? And is it making a profit for them as well as giving to the charity? And again, I think that product, you have to find that product has a good price point, and that's in the development of it, and marketing teams choose the product. And so if we've chosen the right product, people are selling it, they're getting the word out, they're actually getting people in the business. When they love the business, they bring more people into the business. So it's a win-win for everybody. Bonnie at Walgreens, is there anything about employee engagement with your team that you could share?
Absolutely. First thing I'd say is this is about a relationship. This is about a relationship between ACS and Walgreens, and it gets better every year. So it's not a one-shot deal here. Every year we get better. In 2006, we had over 400 teams, Relay for Life teams. Now we have 935 teams. Actually, that was last year's spread, this year. So it's about this communication and this, you get somebody to participate, all of a sudden they're hooked on it, and all of a sudden they're the champion. So for us, with 8,000 stores, we have 2,500 community leaders who must engage with their community. They do 6 events. We give them Relay for Life. We give them this and say, here, go ahead and do this. What happens is they start out and they're right, they're there. We gave them Walk with Walgreens, all right? So we gave them a program that says, let's give out pedometers. So you're not just walking today for ACS, you're walking for yourself every day. And guess what? We collect email addresses. There's a value, tangible value. So what we did is we took this amazing grassroots event tied to a very credible non-for-profit, and we tied it into a business objective, which was, let's collect these email addresses, and by the way, let's get our consumers walking, not just today, but every day. So I think what we did is took the footprint, our footprint, their footprint, and created this program that really enhanced both of us. And it's been very successful, and I think, again, it just gets better and better with this growing relationship.
You talk about the relationship, and we've actually used the analogy it's like a marriage, you know, and because sometimes we'll be working with clients who are a little bit more interested in something kind of a one-off. You know, they want to do something because it's October and it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we like to say, think about it, it's okay to have the date, but think about it as the potential for a long-term marriage. So I would love to hear from all three of you, with your unique perspectives. What's the magic? How do you sustain, when you have a successful partnership that spanned years, maybe in some cases decades, what's the magic ingredient? How does that happen? Especially when the economy goes north and south, right? Because that's something that's been, I think, challenging with marketers and their spending.
I'll start with this one. It is 100% about communication. If the communication is good, it's bad, it's whatever. I have Flo Bryan, who is has been my partner with this with our cause efforts with ACS.